to talk about Resident Evil 7.
Yeah, I feel like someone's been staring at me for a while here.
Have you just been playing too much RE7? It's just kind of
maybe. I'm getting a creepy vibe to my left over here.
We have a very special guest.
Huh?
We have one Steve Gaynor to welcome to the family here at Game Informers. So welcome, Steve from Fullbright.
Hey, everybody. Thanks for having me on to chat about freaky houses and walking around in them.
It's really your specialty. So, Steve, if you don't remember him from being on the podcast months ago, I guess, writer-designer for Bioshock 2's Minerva's Den DLC, Gone Home, working on Tacoma, most importantly, the Tone Control podcast, which has been dormant for way too long, Steve.
Well, I'm planning on bringing it back, but too much video game development going on for me right now.
That's
but
right.
After Tacoma's out, I want to do more of those good dev interviews.
Awesome. But we wanted to have you on the show because you've been tweeting a lot about RE7. You've been streaming some of your playthrough. You seem really enthusiastic about it. I saw the official Resident Evil account was tweeting out snippets of your stream as well. And I don't know if you noticed, but Resident Evil 7 feels a little Gone Homey.
And it's very much an Ouroboros of the original Resident Evil mansion was certainly a point of reference for me when working on Gone Home. And so then playing Resident Evil 7 and being like, some of this feels a little like Gone Home is a cool.
I mean, you guys considered guns for Gone Home, right? Just carrying everyone around.
Yeah, it's just we considered guns but no bullets. So you're just sort of like, I got this, I guess.
Perfect. Plenty of gross food. It's got everything. So, Reiner, you actually reviewed Resident Evil 7.
Yeah.
I'm curious, what did you think of this thing?
I liked it. And I want to go back to square one when they first debuted Resident Evil 7. And it really looked like it was going to be almost like a new IP with the Resident Evil name on it. It was more a ghost story about supernatural stuff, which
new
really
IP or a new PT, Reiner?
Oh, yeah. Very nice. But it, I was a little worried about it at that point. And in that I always liked the series' campy science fiction and these shadow organizations working on top secret projects. I think people know Umbrella better than any character in the game, the whole organization behind it.
Sure.
So I was concerned about that. But after playing Resident Evil 7 now, I could say it fits really nicely in with all the other entries because they do go back at a certain point and connect the dots in a really interesting way.
Interesting but subtle way seemed to be your impression.
Yeah. I mean, you have to read documents. It's Res Evil at heart.
Yeah.
I think that's the thing. And you really do get that connection, too, when you're playing through the mansion. Again, it starts out kind of like a ghost story, but that's kind of a smokescreen. And once you get to know the Baker family a little, it opens up more and becomes a game of opening locked doors, hunting for items, kind of those trademark qualities of Res Evil, where you are moving room to room to room. And I think they do a really awesome job of keeping that fresh and introducing unexpected elements, whether that's a character jumping out at you or giving you a different adversary, trying to figure out how to handle that foe in the environment.
So the months and months of people being like, this isn't RE7, this isn't a real RE game, look at that, it's first person. It's just, you think all those arguments are just null and void now?
Yeah, I do. Out? I think by the time you finish the game, you'll be like, that was a cool Resident Evil game.
Interesting. So you finished the game real quick just to lay the land. I played the first couple hours. Steve's played the first couple hours. Javy, you finished it. Kyle, you're basically at the end.
He's right there.
Yeah, almost at the end.
Okay, the credits have started rolling and then you paused it and came down.
That's right. His favorite part of the game, the credits.
Is that right? Steve, I'm curious, just in a broad sense, what's most interesting to you about Resident Evil 7?
Well, I mean, from a player's perspective, I'm really excited that they took a big departure from kind of the last 10 plus years of Resident Evil games. I mean, I think that's what really defines the great entries in the Resident Evil series. Is Resident Evil 1, obviously a new thing, but it was really in a lot of ways unlike, I think, anything that people had played before, aside from maybe Alone in the Dark on PC, but it was like a very fresh new experience. And then Resident Evil 4 completely rethought what Resident Evil means. And I think that since that point, a lot of people have been like, oh, I want Resident Evil to get back to horror and get back to really feeling oppressively, like you're in this kind of like stressful, traditional survival horror scenario. And Resident Evil 7, I think, has done that in a way that's very modern and very surprising, to the point of them being like, we're going to make a full-on first-person exploration, action game, horror game, where it is just like you in this house and maybe one, really scary enemy that you're trying to figure out how to navigate around. And it really brings back that feeling, the aesthetic feeling of the original Resident Evil, while not being a throwback in any other way. It's totally new method of approaching those things, and the technical achievement that they've had to pull that off from a development standpoint is really impressive to me. Because as far as I'm aware, Capcom has never made a full first-person game before, and like this, right?
Well, Resident Evil,
like light gun games, right?
Or like Survivor, is that the PS2,
That's the PS2
Resident Evil?
era,
yeah, but certainly not a fully narrative-based first-person game.
Right.
I don't think. Yeah,
and so like seeing, Capcom's a huge company. They have a ton of resources, but seeing them really make what I think feels like a very accomplished first-person game in controls and presentation and everything that you're kind of doing and interacting with on screen, I'm like, wow, they haven't done this before, and they really nailed it. And there's a lot of really impressive set pieces and stuff. So I've only played a few hours, but kind of on all levels, I was really surprised by what they pulled off.
You seemed in particular just fascinated by the volumetric lighting. This is why we have developers on the show.
Shadow thirst over there.
Yeah, what got you so hot and heated about the lighting in this game?
Well, so like they have a lot of cool subtle effects. One of the other things that I was excited about is how in some levels in games where there's water, you'll see like the wiggly lights going up on the wall, the caustics. There was a moment where I was backtracking and I realized that when you shine your flashlight on the surface of the water, it like reflects those wiggly lights like up onto the walls from where you're shining your flashlight. And like with the volumetric lighting, it's cool and everything, but then when you walk in front of a projector and it's like projecting volumetric light from your hand, and like you can really visibly see that it's in real time kind of having that effect, and it's not just baked in. Those kinds of subtle details that are also technically impressive. Like when you see those in a game, you're like, oh, okay. Oh, wow. They did the work. This is all on screen. And they're the kind of details that aren't the heart of like what you think about generally when you're playing the game, but when you do notice them, just seeing those extra little pieces of kind of how the world and how the lighting works be on screen is just cool to see.
Yeah, for sure. So they've been pitching for a while the Resident Evil Return to Horror. I feel like the Revelation series in particular, it's been a big message for Capcom, is now we're back to horror. But with RE7, it really feels like they're capturing that. Like, why the slow burn now, and why do you think it works? Reiner, you reviewed the game.
Well, that's a tough question. I don't want to spoil too much of what happens, but when you look back at the original games, at the type of horror they had, it was a lot of jump scares, dogs jumping through windows. That was like the first time I think I really jumped during a game, and from that point on, it was all bets are off. Every hallway you go down, you kind of round the corner slowly, or when you hear something, you pause. All that's in this, and I think that's kind of the brilliance of this game's design is they're not afraid to have nothing happening in this game. I love that.
Mm-hmm.
Where there will be no sound, there will be no action. It's just you in a kitchen or in a bedroom, and you're scared to death because there's nothing happening. And then you might hear a creak.
Yep.
You might see a shadow dance or something like that. And then, it becomes something so much more just from that one moment of silence. I love that.
It's a game that's great at playing with your imagination because, you'll always hear like footsteps above you.
Yeah.
And you're like, okay, is that, the crazy hillbilly going to come and hit me with his hammer? Or, is that just a creak? Because this is an old house. Like, I think that's honestly my favorite thing about this game is the sound design. And also, I can't remember if it's Steve Reiner was talking about how it's not a throwback. It's going back, but it's also reinvention. And I think the biggest part about that is the setting. Like, I just love that it's in Louisiana and that it's like this old dilapidated estate instead of being the fancy mansion from the first one, because it sells that atmosphere that you're in a creepy house that might be haunted or whatever.
Nothing scary about Colorado, but the South.
The South is, like swamps and gators and water moccasins, and like there's enough scary in the South besides crazy like hillbillies coming to get you.
Does it really add a lot? Is it just so they can have kind of like a yellowish tint to everything? Because of course that's what the South looks like.
Yeah. You just feel hot when you're in there.
Right.
It's really warm in
and
here.
Heat's terrifying. It's very simple.
Sweltering heat is terrifying.
That's why Javy and I got out of there, because we were just so scared.
We were actually sweating during the stream.
Is it like the full... Oh, go ahead, Steve.
I was going to say, I think part of what's interesting about what they've done with kind of the new direction of the game, both formally and everything. But it feels like there's a few really clear reference points that they've pulled in that are interesting to be part of how they're approaching Resident Evil now, because it feels very Silent Hill, feels very Silent Hill 2 and PT, right? So it kind of feels like Silent Hill 2 and Silent Hills at different points, and other media touchstones. Like, it feels like they definitely watched a lot of True Detective. Right?
Oh, God. That opening cutscene.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And it's just interesting playing a Japanese game that's a full first-person game that's part of this long, 20 plus year series of horror titles, and see how they're bringing Western influences and influences from other horror games into the tone and the mood of the game, and kind of bringing it all together. It's unexpected, and it's cool to see that they're like, if we want to bring this back, we're going to refer to this, and these are kind of our touchstones, and how do we make that into Resident Evil?
I mean, you joke about the snake eating its own tail, but do you think that Gone Home was an influence on this game?
So what I'll say is, I think definitely Amnesia: The Dark Descent was an influence on the game. Like, there are moments I've played like the first 3 hours, and there are moments that are very Amnesia-y, where you're just like, you have no weapon, there's somebody creeping around, and you're like, I'll hide in this corner and hope they go away. And like, it's a very, very Amnesia feeling set of mechanics in some parts of the game. And so I think that the team was definitely influenced by Western indie horror games, and possibly Western indie first-person exploration games. I do, there's an early moment where they introduce the whole, like, you can click on an object and then you examine it and you rotate it, and I was like, I feel okay.
Well, my direct line to Gone Home was just going through everyone's drawers. Like that, I instantly thought of Gone Home as like, oh man, I'm just rifling through this family's crap.
Yeah, where's the narration?
Yeah, but that grandma character you can really connect to if you like know her personally.
Yeah.
So like, I think that's one of those interesting elements where you definitely feel like people on that team were very aware of like all the different aspects of kind of what could apply to what they were trying to do with RE7.
Reiner, does it deviate from that? Does it get more into gunplay?
Oh, yeah.
You just have a shotgun later on, but you're always in this house, right?
The second you get your gun, it changes the script.
Reiner gets his gun.
It really does change script at that point, but they do not abandon the stuff that came before entirely. They will go back and toy with, again, this kind of weird ghost story, possession kind of story that's going on. But it does become more about lining up headshots. I really don't want to spoil anything for people, because discovery is such a big part of this game.
Yeah.
But there are things in this house besides the Bakers. I'll say that much.
Yeah, it's to piggyback off that, I think one of the most impressive things about Resident Evil 7 is that it strikes a balance between sort of first-person shootery stuff and the hide-and-go-seek elements of Amnesia and Alien Isolation, because I really like Alien Isolation, but I think it's like also a 10 to 12 hour game where you're playing hide and seek, and that can get super frustrating, just dying over and over again. And Resident Evil 7 is really good about making you more active at times with combat and whatnot. It's good about striking that balance, and that's something that indie horror games I've noticed have trouble with, I feel like.
Yeah, I agree that I feel like, again, not to spoil too much, but even the part I've played, you start to get into sequences that feel very much like being hunted by the alien in Alien Isolation. I think that isn't a point of reference I had thought of, but it's a really good point. But I think that mechanically it works better in Resident Evil 7 because you can avoid it, but if there's a confrontation, you can actually have some kind of interaction with this thing that's tracking you, aside from just let it run up and kill you and load your game.
Right.
Like, I haven't died very much in Resident Evil 7, but I have felt like I got close. It's sort of like you have to evade, you have to try to lose it, you can stop it for a while to get yourself some room, and there's sort of that recoverability of those feelings of the sequences, but you're not just like well, I'm screwed now. I'll try again. You actually have the tools to survive. Survival horror. You have the tools to survive when you're in one of those tracking sequences, but you still are like, if I don't play my cards right, I'm not going to live through this. And I think that tension is really strong.
Yeah, because in isolation, it eventually gets to the point where if you see the alien across the room and it sees you, then you just know you're dead. It's not even scared. It's, okay, let's do this sequence again.
Yeah.
I never felt that way once in Resident Evil. Like, it was always, even when I had like low supplies, and this is a game that's super focused on inventory management, probably the most since like 3, I think.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Big time.
Like 4, 5, and 6 inventory management isn't like a big thing at all.
It's a thing you have to consider.
But it's not like a huge thing.
Okay.
Like there'll always be enough ammo, I feel like. And in this one, I still feel like as long as you're careful with your shots and whatnot, there's still enough to get by. But I was always had my back against the wall, especially in like encounters when you had like a bunch of things you had to take on.
I'm still trying to figure out how dynamic this game is. Like the family members, they do a lot of teases, certainly, of like, oh, look at the end of this hallway, the character is walking by. But is it full alien isolation where in theory these characters... Reiner says yes, Javy says no.
In some sequences it is.
Yeah, some sequences you are hiding behind something as they walk by, praying that they do not see you. So that is kind of that alien isolation.
And they have their own patrol path, like just minding their own business?
Yeah. But they're their AI. They're going through the house. They're turning, looking.
But it's not the full game.
I played through the opening like 4 hours twice at this point because I played it at home and then we did the live stream. And there were like a couple of sequences that occurred in my playthrough at home that were very memorable that did not happen on our live stream, which I was really surprised about. So, so they do kind of go on their own.
Yeah, when I was streaming it, there's a really good, and this is a little bit of a spoiler, mechanical spoiler. So, apologies, but I was being tracked by a character, and I thought I had a really good evasion route, and it was like, okay, I'll run through here, and I'll ditch him here, and then circle back around, and he won't be able to catch me. And then he just literally busted through the wall in front of me, and I was like, what, can I swear on this?
Go for it, man. Go for it.
I was like, this. But it's like, I have to assume that if I didn't play that way and didn't get the AI there and then end up in this other place at the right time, that wall would have never broken down.
Yeah.
I think those kinds of things are totally up to how you play.
That exact sequence had me laughing out loud because it reminded me of Resident Evil 3 with the Nemesis, which is this beautifully created creature, right? This 10-foot thing.
With the
and
best
in this
theme
game,
song,
this wall comes down and it looks beautiful when it comes down, and then it reveals a half-naked hillbilly with like glasses who's like throwing F-bombs at me. And I was just laughing. I was like, I'm not really scared of this guy right now.
I was terrified of that guy.
It says stars, he'll just I'll do, I guess. So Steve and Javy, you guys just played through RE4 again, and I'm trying to figure out, is this game just for the hardcore Resident Evil fans who love RE1 specifically?
Absolutely not. You can have never played a Resident. This is another thing I like about this game. You can have never played a Resident Evil game. Like if you like Amnesia or Alien Isolation or that kind of game, or you just want to play a horror game and have never touched Resident Evil, you can just jump right in.
What about connections to 4 specifically? Because I love 4. Not so much for the horror aspect, but more actually the adventure.
Well, the problem with that is we're getting into spoiler territory. Then.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's really hard to talk about.
But in terms
next,
in terms of gameplay, if you're saying I love the gameplay of 4, but and I want that sort of thing from 7, that's not going to happen.
Yeah,
that's not a thing. No.
Yeah, without getting into spoilers, like 4 is this kind of sprawling extended adventure,
right?
Yeah.
But 7 in particular, in a good way, which is very complimentary, gives you a chance to really sit into this house and really get to know it really well. Which I appreciate games that do that, where you stay in one environment and you get to know it really well and you discover shortcuts and all kinds of stuff like that. Yeah. So it is separate from 4 in that regard.
It's better, I think, to think of Resident Evil 7 instead of thinking of it like RE4, maybe like something like The Evil Dead. Like, this is Survive the Night. Like, this is what the story of that game is.
Okay, so naturally, is it going to get to Evil Dead 3? Are we gonna like? It feels like a full reset, right?
It doesn't in this game, but it might like in future entries. But it doesn't go Evil Dead 3 in this game.
Right.
Yeah.
But do you want it? Like, first of all, I'm still confused about why they call it 7. I guess it'd be
you
weird.
Just have to finish the
there
game.
Are 6
and
other Resident Evils.
It will totally make sense when you're done.
And also, they've already had 2 Resident Evil 1s at least, so it gets very complicated and whatnot. But where do you want the series to go from here? Like, is this everything we want from Resident Evil? We just want them to hit this note again and again in different settings?
I want them to just keep trying, because this is what I like about Resident Evil. the best thing about it is when those games just try wacky and throw everything against the wall. Like 1 was obviously like a big innovator with like, okay, here's survival horror, and then 4 was like, let's change this up. This is going to be like an action-packed adventure where monsters show up occasionally, and then 7 is just survive the night horror film, picking people off sort of stuff, and it's great. Like those 3 games are really great, and all the other ones like I'm fine with, but I really like it when they try something new. Even when it doesn't work out,
like a full rhythm game next. Is that?
Yeah. I will play a rhythm Resident Evil game. I don't care. Okay. Like, let's do it.
The save room music, you just tap every like 3 minutes.
It feels to me like, again, I've only played the first few hours. I've certainly played games that by the time I'm done with them, they don't really hold together. But I have high hopes for this full game. But it, like, at least for me right now, I get the impression that there's a pretty rich base for extension here with Resident Evil 7. Like, you know, the Resident Evil series has never done a great job of being like, oh, Resident Evil 4 was great, we should extend that into 5 and then 6, and you're like, okay. But it at least feels like, my initial impression is I want to play through the rest of Resident Evil 7, and then I feel like I wouldn't be mad if they were like, we're going to do another first-person Resident Evil 7 type entry in a different setting with, you know, et cetera, for the next title, and kept exploring this idea with Resident Evil further. But I don't know how you guys who have like finished the game and spent more time with it feel.
Yeah, I think the first person, kind of the whole mechanic setup of it from first person and what they do in that, I think that is a solid foundation for a whole new series of Resident Evil games. And yes, they leave it nice and open for the future. I'll say that much, where there's a lot of room for it to grow.
I'm still trying to figure out your thoughts on this game, Reiner, because I feel like you finished the game and you did a lot of walking around the office going like, God, I just don't know. This is such a tough review. It's somewhere in this range, but it's a big range.
Yeah.
And it sounds like from the conversation, this is everything Resident Evil fans wanted. And so I'm curious, what is that difference in your mind? What was clawing at you?
Well, it's like, it's a whole, it walks a fine line between being a new experience and fan service for people that have been there since day one, right? Like by the end of the game, you're like, yes, you did it. You did exactly what you needed to do to keep everybody happy, right? Like, everybody wanted a new, fresh take on Res Evil. They did that. People still wanted Res Evil. They did that as well. I think that's really difficult to do, and that's crazy that they pulled that off in such a dynamic way in this game. But the thing, that I kind of hemmed and hawed with was my connection to that game. Like, I thought Ethan as a character came up a little short at times. Like, I thought he didn't emote all the time when he should have. Like, there'll be times in the game where he'll see like a wall covered in millipedes and he's freaking the fuck out. Like, he's like, oh my God. But then really tragic things happen to him, right? Like, really dramatic things in his
even in the
life.
beginning. Yeah.
He doesn't say a word. And I don't know if Capcom wanted you as the player to be reacting in that moment. But then why have him doing other things? You know what I mean? Like,
it just makes it seem like he just hates bugs but loves taking axes to people's necks.
Yeah, it was interesting because Kyle and I were talking about this during the stream yesterday. I also am not a big Ethan fan. I think he's just sort of white bread and annoying and dull. But there are points where like he'll finish off like an enemy or something, and he'll say like a 80s catchphrase sort of thing.
What?
Yeah, there's not a ton, but there's a couple.
And it's
quips.
just hilarious because it's like, well, I'm a badass now. Like, and that's like one of the few lines he ever has is when he's like insulting corpses or something.
Also, I like the idea of him saying some badass 80s line and then just rummaging through drawers for the next 45 minutes, rotating keys in front of his eyes. Yeah.
It's at odds with the game being otherwise very serious and like quiet and like, this is a serious Resident Evil, guys. But then he's like, hey, you better stay dead this time.
Yeah, he goes full dude. That's actually a thing he says. Like, that's not even like stay dead this time.
And also with the disparate tone, like I understand they're going for like a more gritty approach, but at least it's very silly early on when he's extremely hurt and then just pours some magic juice on it. It's like, might as well just throw a phoenix down on someone.
that has a little bit of story a little bit of story conceit later. I don't know.
Interesting.
I mean, it's
later on it does.
Yeah,
Later,
it's not just magic for the sake of game mechanics.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
I mean, you saw the staples, man.
That's true. That's right.
Can we talk about that scene? Because I feel like that's been in the trailers that they've shown off.
I think you leave it.
Yeah, we can leave it.
Okay.
That's
such a good moment we can dissect, though.
Yeah, it's a dramatic moment. So it's things like that, like with the the character not really kind of standing out when there's a lot of room for it, and they could have done some great things there, but they wanted to have like both worlds, it seemed like, and it just didn't work.
Yeah,
right?
and it's very strange because like everyone else in the game is kind of cliche. Even the bakers themselves, like, oh, murderous hillbillies, but they still have more personality than Ethan, and that's not great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think
I think having worked on games that have like first-person characters that talk in them and first-person characters that don't talk in them, I think that it's really hard to strike that balance because it's exactly like you said, where like, you know, if I'm playing through and I'm in a sequence and I'm like, oh my God, and then as I'm thinking that, the character's like, oh my God, like it makes it deflates it so much for me because you're like, I know, like you don't, you know, you don't have to be impressed with how f***ed up your own game is, you know, like but like you guys are saying, if the character's there and if the character can talk, shouldn't they be saying like, oh my God, you know, like why are they silent? So it's really hard, and I think that I fall on the side more often of like less is more. You know, like when they introduced voice into Dishonored 2, I feel like it was a similar hard balance. You know, where it's like it's cool that you can talk. I don't know if you should have talked as much, but if you weren't, then why can you talk at all? And blah blah blah.
Yeah.
So I think again, the team making Resident Evil 7 bit off a lot of hard problems for making these kinds of games, and I don't know if there are like perfect solutions for them, but I do even in the amount I've played, I find the tone to be kind of all over the place. And like it starts out really dark and kind of like impactful, and pretty soon there's some pretty wacky stuff in it, and it feels like it goes back and forth, but I also feel like that's pretty part and parcel of Resident Evil historically as well, right?
Yeah. Definitely.
But it's a little bit weirder in Resident Evil 7 when the serious stuff, I think, plays more believably kind of like serious and gritty than in prior games.
So with gameplay, Reiner, we focus a lot on the story and whatnot, but with gameplay, you mentioned the other day that there is a boss in this game that had you pulling your hair out. Is it a tough game overall, or is it just this one?
It's just that one boss.
It's just the one.
And it's the sad thing because it's pretty early in the game, and maybe you struggled with it too, right, JV?
Yeah, and Kyle did a little bit as well.
Not quite as much as you guys, but yeah.
Kyle over here.
Can you give me a one-word, non-spoilery like keyword so I can know if I played this or not?
Chainsaw.
So you mean like the first boss?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wait a minute.
well,
Wait, not
hold
like
on.
I imagine it's not like in the first hour.
No.
Okay, there's that chainsaw.
No.
Yeah, not that.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Never mind.
But yeah, there's this one fight where the rules aren't really conveyed very well, and you're gonna die a bunch on that. At least I did. Like it was like just trying to figure out patterns and what to do in that space, and I think that first person perspective in that fight especially kind of hinders it a little bit. Just given the enclosed space and there's kind of things dangling around you, trying to figure out how do I take this down, and it goes on forever. I mean, I was just like, am I doing something wrong? That's the thing that came up, and I think a lot of people might stop playing the game right there, which is a shame because the balance really hits its mark right after that.
Yeah, it's weird because it's like Dark Souls in that it's glitchy and frustrating, and that it's like this is a brilliant concept for like a boss fight, but then like, well, he just got me through this wall. This sucks.
Yeah.
And that happens over and over and over again. I don't know if they patched it or whatever, but Kyle didn't run into that problem yesterday.
I certainly died, and I would certainly agree with you guys that it was up to this point has been the hardest boss in the game. But it wasn't like it was more of like I enjoyed it because it was kind of like, it was clearly like not like, I need to shoot him 20 times. It was like, let me figure out how I need to shoot him, so to speak.
Yeah.
So
anyway.
it hasn't come up once yet, but I see there's a certain faction on Twitter that's saying, if you idiots play this game not in VR, you're blowing it. You're wasting this opportunity because finally publishers swinging big with a VR release, and it's the way to play. Reiner, did you check out the VR version?
I did, and I enjoyed it while I was standing up and turning in my own environment, kind of as you would, like moving around as you'd want to. But if you play it sitting down, the default is that you move at set angles, at 30-degree angles. So you're kind of warping,
snap a little bit,
snapping through the environment.
Wait,
That's
even to like
cool.
walk forward?
No,
or just
no.
to rotate?
You walk
Just rotating.
normal speed, but when you look right, you snap 30 degrees right or 30 degrees left.
Because when you turn on smooth, this is an option, and they have different settings for how smooth you want to make it. whenever I would turn in the right analog stick to turn in VR, it didn't feel right. It didn't feel natural. So I liked using my head to turn and being able to stand up and turn around, because this is a game where you are moving freely, right? It isn't just forward. You are backtracking, turning around, looking through drawers, all that stuff. So set angles, it just felt wrong. You're always thinking about that, just that jump cut. And then the smoothing, maybe it'll be better for other people out there, but for me, it was just like immediately I was like, I'm going to get sick if I keep playing this way. Like, it's just not gelling. And I tried every option possible.
Do you get the sense, though, that if your stomach can handle it, it's going to be the way to play?
Cool. Yeah, if you're standing, like I said, I think it's cool. That's the way to play it.
Well, yeah, I would disagree. I played for about 40 minutes last night with VR. That was about as much as I could handle. And the second action started, like, I struggled playing in VR, and it made it so much harder, and I was really tough. But I did like just walking around in VR. Like, I was crawling under the house, and being in VR to like look at the detail, even though it is turned down a little bit because you're looking at it through like PlayStation VR, to like just like not have to worry about fighting anything and just looking at stuff and seeing the detail in the environment made the house much creepier, and it really sold that environment really well. But like the second I started getting chased or something like that, and I'm like jumping like 30 degrees at a time to try to run away and doing quick turns and stuff like that, like I just was like, I can't do this in VR.
See, that's what I'm saying. If you're standing though, because when you're playing in VR in combat, you are looking down the scope, or like you
have
your
better
shotgun.
aim. Yeah.
So you have better aim. If you have a tight neck, I guess you can aim nicely. So I thought combat was actually a little easier in VR, and headshots are critical.
Did you? I just said you were wrong though. Did you
I heard that.
Okay,
yeah.
just making sure.
Yeah. So I mean, I thought that kind of. And the presence, what we say when enemies are getting up close and personal. They do a good job of that in this game too. And
there's a lot of knives being shoved in your face, and ooh, it's gonna touch you, that type of thing.
I will say, I am glad the option exists. Like, I'm glad they went for it, and I'm glad that I can turn it on and try it and be like, oh, that was kind of interesting. But as far as like playing the full game like that, I can't see myself doing it that way.
It sounds like you just want Gone Home in VR, Kyle.
Yeah, I think I've actually said that statement before. I want a VR game where you can just, because the coolest thing about VR to me is just like being in an environment. So a game like Gone Home where it's all about the environment and exploring the environment, I think that would be very cool. Hey, you guys should do a VR patch. That's easy, right? That's just like
segue, Kyle.
Yeah. No, it's I mean, just click the VR
just
button.
Put Tacoma on pause and like, I've seen those options in Steam.
Did any of you guys play on PC?
No.
I started on PC. Yeah.
Okay, because I'm playing on PC with mouse and keyboard, and it actually works really well. Like, talking about the precision of VR giving you better aim, like the initial setting, like the sensitivity settings and stuff, I needed to tweak with a fair amount for the PC version, because I think it was very tuned to feel more like a gamepad, like your turn radius is really slow and stuff. But once you just adjust the sensitivity, it's just like any highly responsive first-person shooter, and I feel like the game would be a lot well. I've never been like a ultra, prestiging COD player or anything, right? So like my like gamepad FPS skills are probably not what a lot of people's are, but with a game like this that requires precision, and you need to like get every headshot or you're out of bullets, and where you do want to be able to like turn around quickly and get the out, I found that they did a really, really good job with the mouse keyboard inputs actually, and they play well to being effective in the game, I think.
Nice.
I didn't even think about that idea of you can now play Resident Evil like Counter-Strike on a PC. What a weird world. God.
Yeah.
Right
No,
now,
I was worried about it because I was like, are they going to nail, PC FPS controls for this? But I feel like it feels really great.
Wow. Reiner, what'd you end up giving this game?
8.5 out of 10, and I think that is a great foundation for a series moving forward. Like I said earlier, like I really do think there's a lot of room to grow. Some mistakes they made along the way, I think they can iron those out in another one. I hope they get another shot at it. The same formula, but maybe not, with like Javy's parents or whatever as the nemesis.
Wow.
Thank you so much for watching this excerpt from the Game Informer Show podcast. You can click right here if you want to subscribe and listen to the audio version of the full show. Full episodes air every Thursday, and they feature Game Informer editors sitting around talking about the biggest reviews, previews. We talk about exclusive impressions of Game Informer's cover stories. We have long-form developer interviews, everything that's great in gaming. So every Thursday, be sure to check it out.